Third day. This is gone through, what's it, 16 weeks of football. We're on our last week. We're going to the state championship games. 8 teams are left for 4 championships. Dale, I don't know about you, but every year it gets a little bit exciting this time, you know?
Yep. Uh, kind of this year both seems long and short. It seems long, but seems like it just started. I guess is the way to put it. Last week, it's I think overall, we've ran through a lot of games very quickly.
We have. Garrett, how about you, man? You think this has been a long season, short season, don't know season, or?
Uh, it's been a it's been an average season. But I do agree. It felt like it was a little short because it just seemed like I'm sitting there thinking about it. I'm like, well, to me, it just seemed like not too long ago we were just starting football season anyway, and then here we are right here in December, right here at the state championship week, and we've already weeded out who's going to be there and who's not, and and but basically that's just all it is. We everybody's been weeded out. Now we got 8 teams remaining. And then after Saturday we'll have 4 teams. That can rightfully claim themselves to be champions.
Exactly right.
I think the 6 rounds kind of because this season has just gone so fast, but the 6 rounds makes my mind think differently on the length of things. It's interesting having playoffs this long.
The one thing I've noticed though, like used to be, we'd have a couple of rounds that just the first and second round. First round, you'd have maybe a couple of decent games, and the second round, you'd have maybe a handful more. The first round, you had just a handful of decent games, but the second round seemed like over half of them were really good games in all 4 classifications, and which I think it kind of goes back to what we've been talking about, like especially with 4A. There's so much parity in 4A. There's not really any really team that really stands out above and beyond the others. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and but I'd like to see them just go ahead and whack off one week if we're ever doing the 4 rounds or the 4 classifications like we are. Just go ahead and take off one that first week and make it 32 qualify in each classification.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a problem with it. Uh, to me, it's just a matter of if we did 10 games in the season, then I don't have too much of a problem with it. Season's long. When you really think about it, season is long and could be cut a week. And if that meant cutting the playoffs down, I'm okay with that. I think the kids should be allowed to move on to their next sport a lot sooner than what uh, they're doing here. But I guess the association will decide all of that. Going to be interesting to see, Jim, if we do get multiple classifications coming down the road. So,
I like what my friend Raven Davis said. There's a lot of talk about having 6 classifications. He says, whenever I buy a pizza, I never ask the baker to cut in 7 pieces. I either want to
mm-hmm.
do it in 6 pieces or 8 pieces. And then I get that. 7 classifications be a lot to me.
I think
Six
that's too
classifications
many.
be
Yeah,
six would
I
be
think
fine.
6 is maybe more right. Um, I don't know. I really should play around with some numbers, though. The NCHSAA is going to do what they're going to do, but it's always good to see what things might look like. I think 7's too many, though. That just doesn't seem right. That's That's odd.
Yeah.
Think that I see here. Someone says so. Teddy Brown, ST says, think the kids prefer to play for a championship and make ball weight. That's true, but they would still be playing for a championship if it was shortened a week. It's still, man, it's a long season, and football's a grueling sport. So very demanding on the body. And kids really do need to be rounded, I think, athletes. But hey, what do I know?
We know somehow football shape is different than basketball shape, which is different from baseball shape. I mean, every sport you have to condition in a different way.
That's true. That's exactly right. One of the good things about multiple sports is that because of that, and because different sports require different abilities, they can help athletes develop better. Uh, so if a football player can play basketball, it can help them with their footwork and their lateral movement, um, which is a big thing in football. And hey, the flip of that is a basketball player can learn to be more physical by playing football. And who doesn't like a physical power forward or a physical big guard, right? So um, I'm a big fan of multiple sports. Carrie says lots of kids are very competitive in other sports like wrestling. Exactly. Some of the best athletes I've come across are multiple sport athletes. Some of the best players are multiple sport athletes.
Well, one of the most famous multiple sport athletes just became the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, that's
Prime
true.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a circus. That's a circus watching that on Twitter and Facebook. Everybody's opinions on it. It's like watching a circus. And I'm not talking about Prime. I'm talking about all the people in their feelings on what he's done. But yeah, he was. There's been a number of really, really good three sport athletes. I'm never going to forget Mike Epley, who played here
Clemson.
in Charlotte at Harding and then went to, he was a three sport all state player and went to Clemson and played football and basketball, started at quarterback and started at point guard. Um, so that's a little hard to do now, especially with football running into January for people. And I'm talking about college, but I think the development of an athlete is better if they will participate in other sports and not go into off-season training and just focus on one sport. Because you hit on it, Jim. You condition differently. You train differently. You move differently.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, football, you get rest in small spurts, 20, 30 seconds, Basketball is continuous movement unless you're on
Mhm.
offense and you don't have the ball. You can, sometimes you can kind of glide in a corner and rest for a few seconds. Baseball, very little playing if you really think about it. But when you run, you have to run as fast as you can in a very short increments for the most part. I mean, what's around the bases? I mean, it's like 360 feet. It's not much if you hit a home run in the park home run, but it's just different sports. You have to use different muscles each one of them. I think really one of the most challenging sports for a conditioning side would be soccer.
without question. I played soccer, and I can tell you without question, because you're running all the time, all the time. It can get a little bit physical too. I was explaining to a friend of mine who played soccer. He was from Europe, and I say a friend. He was a colleague and a work colleague, and he asked me to explain football to him. So I was trying to think, how do you what's it like to play football? How do you explain that to someone? And what I told him was, I said, here's how you can get a simulation of what it does to you physically. Get in front of a wall, get maybe about 4 foot away from the wall and run as hard as you can into the wall, and then start pressing on the wall very hard, moving your feet, trying to run through the wall for maybe 10 seconds, and then stop and wait about 25 seconds and do that again and do that again. Baseball, I loved baseball when I was a kid, and I was a very good ball player, but baseball is a sport that when you move to the dugout, it gets a little more boring. And then when you get up into the stands, it's even more boring. But what do you get from it? Eye-hand coordination. A lot of sports have that short burst of speed that you need, but no sport quite has the eye-hand coordination, except for maybe tennis. The need for eye-hand coordination, which can ultimately help. Heck, that can help a receiver. Okay, let's hear. You should watch high school wrestling. That is unbelievable. I've watched it. Several of what I would call family friends were state championship caliber kids. They played. Both of them played middle linebacker. Played middle linebacker in college. One at Wingate, one at Limestone, and they both were oh gosh, state finalists. I think Jared won state championship a couple of years. It's have you guys ever been to a wrestling match? A high school wrestling match, not Ric Flair.
High school, yes. Never been to a Ric Flair one, but I've been to high school ones.
I've never been to one.
You've never been to a high school wrestling. Okay. You've been to oh gosh, I'm trying to think of some of the old wrestlers I used to watch. You've
Ricky
been to
Steamboat.
the fake wrestling, right?
No, I hadn't been to that either.
Oh,
A friend of
really?
mine went when they had it down here at the local event center. They had an old TNA live event going on, and he went to it.
Yeah.
And that was back when you had like Kurt Angle and TNA and Christian, wrestler Christian and TNA back during that time, back when TNA was pretty popular.
Yeah, I had to fly to Jacksonville, Florida in one of the worst snowstorms that we've had here in Charlotte. And I flew out, and they shut the airport down about 1 or 2 flights after me. But sitting behind me was Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair. Closest I've ever been to Dusty Rhodes, and his forehead was just, Dusty used to bleed a lot, if you remember Dusty Rhodes. And you could see the cut marks where they'd cut their forehead with razor blades. I ran into them. I ran into Ole and Arn, Anderson, and those guys are actually the Andersons were collegiate NC2A champions in wrestling. Those guys are good athletes, but she says here lots of football players wrestle. It's one of the best sports a football player could participate in, especially a defensive player, because it teaches you to grab and hold on.
One of my favorite moments was a 2020 show where John Stossels goes up to a wrestler and says, "Well, I think wrestling is fake." And the guy's like, "Slam. Does that look like it's fake?" And he's like, gets up, slam, and knocks him down. Does that look like it's fake? And anyway,
Yeah,
that
that's
was. I mean, that was
kind
just
of the
like.
way
I
it
mean, what he was
goes
doing was
sometimes.
he was like a bunch of hornets, and he just wanted to hit the stick, and the wrestler took care of it.
It's staged, but it's highly coordinated. And
it's choreographed like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, exactly. Choreographed like you would, because if it wasn't, they would get seriously hurt. They could get seriously hurt in the things that they do.
Exactly.
And to make it look like it's just totally 100% real, you got to come close on everything. You got to hit. I mean, they do hit each other and all that. You have to do all those things and be able to withstand them. So I think they're phenomenal athletes.
I've read, a lot about pro wrestling. That there's a lot of stuff they do that is, choreographed or scripted, but there's a lot of things too that looks that's pretty real. Like when you are using like certain, like when they using like weapons and objects and stuff that there's a certain spot that you use, like the sweet spot, that cause it to break or to bend or whatever. But I read that some say that stuff still really hurts. So I mean,
It
I've never,
sure
like I say,
does.
never been to a pro wrestling event, but I've heard that it's pretty interesting. They even said that the pro wrestling mats are like about as soft, if not softer, than pillows. So I like I say, I've
The
never been
wrestling mats? No.
No, they're pretty hard.
pro wrestling.
Yeah, no, they're springy, they're taut, they're kind of hard. They have to be to for the things that they do. All right, I brought up, maybe we might do this for a little bit, talk about the games we got coming up, Jim.
Yeah, last week Tarboro handled business like we thought they would. They beat Northampton County 45-20. Nothing to really see in that score. In Mount Airy, Mount Airy beat Andrews. Let's go down a little bit.
There we go.
Because Tarboro beat, or go down.
Go
Tarboro
down.
Beat,
I'm sorry. I thought I was down. There we go.
Yeah, there you go. Tarboro beat Rosewood 35-7, and which we expected. And Mount Airy, this one, I don't think anybody predicted that Mount Airy would be drawn by 29 points by a 35-6 score. I know people picked Mount Airy. I picked Drawn to win this game, and I was sadly wrong about that. But I thought Drawn's passing attack would be hard for Mount Airy to defend. But obviously, Mount Airy's got that one taken care of.
Yeah, it's one of those games you felt like Drawn had a chance in, and I picked Drawn early, and all through the week I was tossing back and forth, but not to a point of a 35-6 win by Mount Airy. So
yeah, this game, I guess these two teams met up about, I'm gonna say maybe 5 years ago or so in the 1AA's, and Tarboro won that game in the state championship. Uh, this game right here is a lot of ways these teams are very similar. Both of them are very run heavy. Tarboro, they might throw three passes in the game or two passes in the game. Yeah, Mount Airy might throw the ball 6 or 7 times in the game. Both teams rely heavily on the run. Mount Airy has more veterans on that team than Tarboro. Tarboro is a pretty young team. It's kind of scary if Tarboro wins this game, how good that the next 3 4 years going to be.
Right.
I'm kind of going back and forth on this. I think Tarboro might be just a teeny bit more than Mount Airy can chew, but this game can really go either way.
Yeah, I'm leaning to Tarboro. That's who I picked, and here we are at Wednesday, and I haven't changed my pick. I'm still, on the Tarboro side. I can see Mount Airy winning the game, though. It's not out of the question.
How about you, Garrett?
I'm gonna have to go with Tarboro on it. Like you say, this game right here is more so a big toss up. If anybody can get Tarboro, it definitely could be Mount Airy. It's like you said, last week, Dale. Tradition uh, versus a newcomer. When you talk about Mount Airy and drawing, you know, this time it's tradition versus tradition. So basically, I Mary to me would if anybody I think could beat Turbo, that this would be the team to do it. Um, but I still think Turbo is probably still going to have enough firepower and coaching to beat the Granite Bears.
All right. Let's see here what we got next.
Well, next one. Let's go down to the final four. Here we go. Wallace Rose Hill, East Duplin. Last week I flipped a coin. Yeah, I could not decide who was going to win between Wallace Rose Hill and East Duplin. My
Yep.
coin said Wallace Rose Hill. East Duplin wins by 2 points.
And I flipped and I said, since you picked Wallace Rose Hill, I'd pick East Duplin. So, yeah.
It was one of these games, though, that, and I pretty much said it could have gone either way. And
Exactly.
I think Wallace Rose Hill may have gone for 2 and missed it to the very end. But in the second game here, I was pretty strong on Reedsville. I know Burns had a good game or great team, and they were going to be a team that would give Reedsville a challenge. But Reedsville pretty much handled them from the beginning of the game to the end. This matchup between Reedsville and East Duplin. I mean, when it comes to coaching, I think it's Jimmy Teague is hard to beat, but Battle Holly is one of the best coaches in the state. I have a lot of respect for him and his father, Jack Holly, is a legend. So coaching to me, it's kind of a wash. Both these teams, East Duplin went to the state championship in 2017. Reedsville seems like every other year, if not every year, they're in the state championship. I think Reedsville's passing game is the key. They rely more on the pass than they do on the run. And also, Reedsville has a tremendous defense. Reedsville will stop a team from rushing the ball. They have a good secondary. This game, I'm going to say Reedsville's, I'm going to say 10, 12 points. It's kind of where I'm leaning towards Reedsville right now.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Certainly, I pick Reedsville. And score-wise, I think I hate to say this, but out of all the games, this potentially could be the least competitive. It's still going to be close and competitive, but maybe not like the one scores that we're going to see here in some of the other games, but or what we think will be one scores. I they throw for over 2,000 yards. that could be problems, I think, for your Duplin boys there, Garrett.
Well, I guess this is my turn now. Okay, when when I saw this, when I saw these matchups, I always said to myself, I said, if East Stupid plays Burns, East Stupid should have them pretty good. If they play Reedsville's gonna be tough, and I wouldn't put it past Reedsville to beat them. And you see that, and I'm still sticking to that statement. Reedsville, to me, is the toughest one that they're gonna face all year. Um, and I mean, we have to kind of rewind ourselves back to that Wallace East Stupid game, because that game was neck and neck pretty much throughout the entire game up until about the fourth quarter, when East Stupid scored and made it 21-14. Then Wallace turned right back around and scored, and it was 21-20. But the East Stupid made a very spectacular block PAT that kept the score at 21-20. And that right there, in my opinion, kind of was considered the turning point of that game. Now, as far as the passing goes, when Wallace started passing the ball against East Stupid, they threw one, there was an interception. And then the second one was a 50-yard touchdown completion that Wallace made against East Stupid. So passing is going to be a Achilles heel for the Panthers for sure. And I know that like to say that East Stupid Wallace game was neck and neck all the way through. I listened to it on the radio. Um, the boys from Jacksonville did a great job with that game. They're going to cover the game this coming Saturday too. And this, to me, this game is, like you say, if Reedsville doing all that passing, Reedsville is going to be very, very tough to handle. East Stupid, they got a good running game, and I think that running back is basically pretty much their engine that runs that Panther motor. And if they stop them, then the Reedsville might end up taking this game. So I've got to go with Reedsville pretty much on this one.
All right. So the next game here, got Northern Nash last week. They beat 71st, and that game went back and forth and back and forth. You'd think Northern Nash is going to pull it out, then 71st will come back, and Northern Nash scored was the last one to score, and they won that game 23-22. And the game probably of the week in the state was the one that Dale went to. East Lincoln 14, South Point 7. Great defense. Dale, would you like to expand a little bit on that game?
Sure. So it was without question one of the best defensive games I've seen in a while. Not overall, but in a while. Certainly, I think this year, the best defensive game. So East Lincoln has a phenomenal, I think, defense. I thought about them more as offense, but they really shut down the South Point run game. Held South Point to 7 points. If you think back to what South Point's done earlier in the year with teams like Dudley, 74 points. To get shut down like that was pretty impressive. I think actually very impressive the way that East Lincoln did that. They forced South Point into their uncomfortable zone, which is throwing the ball. South Point has a phenomenal quarterback, freshman quarterback. And if the kid threw more, he wouldn't be in situations that he got put in. But, Jim, they got up 14-0. South Point scored. South Point had the ball with 3 minutes left and then had to give the ball back. And East Lincoln was not able to convert, and South Point got the ball back again on their 30. They had one big throw down the sideline that looked like while the ball was flying, somebody shot it with a shotgun. The defender had slipped. The receiver caught the ball, but because it was such a poorly thrown ball, overall, he had to stop and wait for the ball to come to him. If not, he scores. And then they got down in the red zone. They're down at the 10. And 9 seconds left in the ball game, down 14-7. He rolls out right, goes to throw the ball, and it slips out of his hand. And I went back and looked at video, and if you can see my hand here, the nose of the ball was actually up, not like so, thrown very short, pretty much right into defender's hand. And that ended the game. So South Point did a great job of shutting down what I thought was a very effective East Lincoln offense. And something to note about East Lincoln, these kids are big. They're not small kids. The receivers look like power forwards off of off your basketball team. They're 6'3", got nice bodies. This is a good football team. The only thing that would harm them from being like in the top 2 or 3 in the state is depth. And I don't know if that would impact them, Jim. I really left that game impressed with this team. This is without question a top 10 team in the state of all classifications. So it was a great football game. I expect this to be a great football game.
Yeah, the Northern Nash, they have done everything they needed to advance. Last week they beat 71st. I think 71st, East Lincoln, Northern Nash, Kings Mountain, South Point, all 5 of those teams are your class of the 3As.
Yeah,
I think those 5 teams are the best. And I don't think there's really that much separation between those 2 teams. Sure, East Lincoln, beat Kings Mountain by 16, 17 points. Beat South Point by a touchdown. On any given day, those teams could be a different outcome on that.
right.
I think all 5 of these teams are really good. Both Northern Nash and South Point play the best defense in the 3As. I think this is going to be another very slow-moving game. You're not going to see a lot of points scored. You're going to see a lot of great defensive plays, a lot of team concept defense on both sides. A little bit of a mirror image of each other. Both of them move the ball. They throw and pass, or pass and run by the same ratios, both teams. The one thing that's on the East Lincoln side is they have the seniors. This time of year, you want to have that leadership with some really great senior players. The one thing that's going on in Northern Nash is they probably got one of the best kickers in the state. And in a very close game like that, a kicker, a punter, the little intangibles can make a difference. I'm looking at it, though. I'm going with East Lincoln. It's going to be a close one, though. This game could really go either way. It's not going to be a blowout by any means by either team. I don't see either team's winning this game by more than 2 touchdowns. But I'm going to say East Lincoln by a couple of points. And I just expect this to be the best, probably the class game of the playoff, of the class, or the championships.
Yeah, I'm going one score. I jumped over on another section of Max Preps just to see a couple of things. East Lincoln's punter averages 45.5 yards a punt. Now,
that's unheard of.
Yeah, but they've only got him here for 2 punts.
Okay, 90 yards total.
He's
Okay,
not punted exactly 91 yards. 49 and 49. I watched him punting, and yeah, he's got a good leg. And I'm just looking at these things because the things that are going to be important in this ball game, because it's going to be a high defensive, ball game, and I think a very low scoring ball game. It could be very much like the ball game I watched last week. Those kinds of stats, or those elements, as you put it, the kicking game and Northern Nash's punting game, 37.8, which for a high school kicker is good.
Very good.
Yeah, that's not it's maybe not recruitable as a punter, D1, but that's very good for a high school kicker. Long of 51 yards, and they got him for 33 punts. So I'm looking here to see lots of kickoffs in the end zone, it looks like. And they don't have anything listed on field goals. So I'm not sure what his field goal capability is, but those are all important factors in a game like this. Because field position, flipping the ball, flipping the field is going to be very, very important. Garrett?
I think the Northern Nash kicker, one game hit like a 44 or 45 yarder.
Well, that's
good.
That's good. That's real good. Exactly. That's you trust your kicker with a 45-yard field goal in high school and he makes it. Yeah. That says a lot right there.
That's pretty much spectacular, really. In high school, you got kickers that your average yards kick, is about 30 yards, maybe. I think that may be the average yard field goals, probably. I might be wrong, but this game right here, I kind of go with you guys on this. It's going to be a very low scoring game. It's going to be it's going to probably be one of the best games of the weekend. It will, I think this right here, I'm going to go for East Lincoln on this. It's just something telling me that's going to be East Lincoln because, like I said, it's going to be a low scoring game. It's going to be one of them fans' favorites where everybody's going to be on the edge of the seat, so to speak, to that final whistle. It may be one of them boring games too, where everybody be like, I want some action. But this would probably be the best game, I think, one of the best games of the weekend.
I just wanted to make sure you understood it's East Lincoln.
East
Lincolnton is the city, of the county seat, but county being Lincoln. I don't know how they would feel about that. It's the only reason I'm pointing that out.
East Lincoln. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It's an easy mistake to make. If East Lincoln wins the they win the state championship, all is forgotten. So
Exactly. I don't think they care. They will care then. Exactly.
It's just like people from the from the uh from the west calling East Duplin East Dublin and
Duplin.
and
Duplin
and
is
James
so. What
Keenan
I hear
Warsaw
people say,
Keenan.
yeah, what I hear people say is Duplin.
Yeah, Dublin. I'm like that's Dublin. We're not in Ireland.
Well, no, they say dup, like dup, not dub, dup is what I hear a lot of. They do
Carol,
pronounce the P, but instead of it being like a dupe, a D, DOUP, dupe,
duh,
it's
duh.
probably. I wonder what the English pronunciation of it is, because I'm sure that county name comes from probably England or the
Right,
UK.
you're gonna have some fun. Have a person pronounce Perquimans. Most of the time, they're gonna pronounce it Perquimans and Manamus.
Perquimans. I
They'll
don't
call
know
it
how to say it
Perquimans.
wrong now.
Perquimans is the wrong way. Another one's Manamus.
actually,
They'll call it Manamuska.
actually, talking about Duplin County. I I know I read this one time before, a long time ago. There's an article about um about my ancestral history and the fact that the that there was some of my ancestors, I think, from way back. There was German Palestinians that that settled into Burgall and Duplin County. So it's possible that they probably got it from maybe like Dublin, Dublin, Ireland or something.
It's named after a person called Lord Duplin.
Or Lord Duplin. Yep, that's right.
That's in England.
Huh?
Is that in England?
Sir Thomas Hayes, Lord Duplin. The county is. I'll look it up. We'll
Might be
talk about it after we
Scottish.
let's finish this foray, and then we can talk about this.
Yeah, this one right here, Newbern. They've been on cruise control just about throughout the playoffs. They had a couple of scares. I guess it was Jordan High School early on the season, and Millbrook. I mean, they had Millbrook had this game pretty much won. Millbrook scored a touchdown late in the game. Newbern just hasn't really been that much battle tested this year. Grimsley, on the other hand, oh my gosh! I mean, one close game after the other. Last week beat Weddington 28-27. They went into overtime in that game. The week before, overtime against was it Huff? And then the week before that was I think it was Independence, and the week before that was Charlotte Catholic. They have played some really good teams in the playoffs. Grimsley, they can move the ball through the air or on the ground. Their quarterback probably has half of their offense. I forgot he's close to 2,000 yards passing. He's gotten about 1,000 yards rushing. Newbern, on the other hand, they're kind of like Woody Hayes. You're not going to see them throw the vertical pass that much. The lateral pass. You're going to see them run, and run some more. And third and long, they'll just do even extra best effort to run. Newbern is a team that will wear you out. They can get the ball, do 3 yards in a cloud of dust, or on their situation is usually about 7 yards. They can eat up that clock really fast. Grimsley might have a tough time with Newbern's offense. I think especially late in the game, I could see Grimsley getting worn out. The key of the game to me is Newbern's got to take care of the ball. If they take care of the ball, they don't turn the ball over, and I think they can I think they can dominate Grimsley's offensive line. Grimsel, on their hands, they opened the field up. I mean, they have to me, they actually have a passing game, unlike Newbern. This game, I've been going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth on this. Part of me wants to say Grimsley, part of me wants to say Newbern. I'm going to roll the dice on this one, and I'm picking Newbern by a couple of points.
Yeah, that the Grimsley quarterback, he's rushed for over 20 touchdowns. He's thrown for almost 30. They have a very dangerous offense. They've got a good run game, got a good passing game. So they can attack in many different methods. Trying to find the best way to put that. Newbern is the kind of team that can grind the ball and consume clock and keep a high-powered offense on the sideline, which can I don't know what that can do to rhythm for a team. I mentioned this before, and it didn't quite pan out. Does it, disrupt a team enough that they're unable to produce like they normally would? I don't know. There's a tough. I think it's going to really come down to how well the Newbern defense plays. I think the Newbern offense will do what they normally do, but how well will the Newbern defense play? Will they be able to handle these different phases of football, from throwing the ball to running the ball to having a Garrett, I see, went away. Now he's back. So can they handle that? That's going to be the big question, and that'll be the big telling point of the game. I think it's going to be an interesting ball game. I'm picking Newbern, by the way.
You're picking Newbern. The one thing also that's in the back of my mind, I'm not expecting great weather on Friday. It's supposed to rain most of the day. I think it's not supposed to get over until it might be late in the second half until that game's over. I think the bad weather could have an impact and might favor Newbern. For those people who don't know, the eastern part of the state tends to get more rain than the rest of us do. But also, I think with the rain, it might be easier to run the ball as opposed to pass the ball in the rain. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's a good observation. It's you wonder about it sometimes. I don't disagree with it. The big thing is you can still fumble, a wet ball in the rain. Is the West the visiting team this year? I don't know. I don't know. So yeah, I'm going Newbern, and you might be right. If it's a muddy or a rainy night, that may at least slow down the passing game. But Grimsley can run the ball, so this might force them to do more of that.
I'm getting some background noise. I'm not exactly sure where it's coming from.
So I don't hear anything right now. I do when you turn your mic on. So right now I don't. All right, listen, keep it off just a second. Right now I don't hear anything. Do I? Let me mute. Garrett, can you mute yourself a second?
Yeah.
Okay. It must be coming back from Garrett's. Okay, you can unmic. Yeah, if you were hearing the echo back, I think, of me. Is that what you were hearing?
Yeah, exactly. I was hearing like football.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is.
Okay. See, I think this is. I'm kind of excited about this week. It's possible you might have all four teams in the West win. I think it's possible you might have three teams in the East win. East Duplin, I I just don't think they're going to. I just don't see them beating Reedsville. But
Right.
I like seeing a little bit more parity between the East and the West. But we're not really seeing that when it comes to depth. Like 1A, you had one really great team in Tarboro. Then you had a couple pretty good teams like Rosewood and Northmore in the East. But in the West, you had Robbinsville, Murphy, you had Andrews, you had Drawn, you had Mitchell, you had Eastern Randolph, Mount Airy. Just a lot more depth. It's the same thing with 2A, 3A, well, 2A and 3A maybe not as much, but 4A just seemed like it's in the East the whole time, the whole year we've been talking about Newburgh, but the West just loaded. Whether it be Grimsley or East Forsyth or Huff or Mallard Creek or Weddington or just a lot of really good teams in the West. I like seeing I like to see the depth and quality of programs increase in the East, so it matches with the West. Right now, I think the West has got the better football.
If you look at, like you were nailing down earlier, the run that Grimsley had to make to get here, all great football teams, um, tough games. So there's no question about them being battle tested here in the playoffs. Garrett, you got any comment? You picking Grimsley? What you doing?
Well, this game right here, I'm gonna have to go with Newbern, but just barely. I know that I was kind of keeping tabs on the Grimsley Weddington game a little bit, and um, what I saw was that Weddington had Grimsley, and it's like not not that much left to go in the game. And then next thing I know, when I checked it again, Grimsley came back and beat them by one. And I'm like, well, daggone. I mean, I thought Weddington was gonna advance and beat Grimsley. And then look back at it again later, saw that Grimsley beat Weddington. So um, that to me, that was kind of another one of those good close games that a lot of teams, what a lot of fans would like to see.
Unless you're a Weddington fan.
Unless you're a Weddington fan, right?
It was a good game. Unfortunately for Weddington, you got to play till the last second of the game. So those last minutes were not kind to Weddington, who is a very good team and another kind of young team, Jim, who we'll be talking about them next year, maybe this time.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So let's see. Jeff here's taking Grimsley. So it's not a bad pick, Jeff. It's kind of a hard. It's hard for me to make a solid pick, but I've been behind Newbern and pretty much all season, and I like run games this time of year. We're going to see.
If you go into before the playoffs started, if you told me Grimsley would be the number one team out of the West, I wouldn't doubt it. But I was thinking, well, what happened to Huff? What happened to East Forsyth? What
Mm-hmm.
happened to Independence. Independence got really hot at the end of the season. What happened to Mallard Creek? What happened to Julius Chambers?
Yep.
I thought Grimsley maybe a little bit better than Weddington. And it ended up those teams were pretty much identical when it came to overall performance. But I just it was just one of those things where Grimsley there were maybe fifth or sixth best team throughout the season in the West. But I mean, look at the record. Who they lost to? Nobody. So
You know what it's called? Survive in advance.
yeah, exactly. They got some Jimmy V on them. Look at
Exactly.
Newbern. Newbern's. A lot of people say Newbern hasn't won anything. They beat a team in Virginia that's playing for the 6A state championship.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that Newbern had a weak schedule. It's not like they dunked anybody. Who's Newbern supposed to play? I mean, there's not many 4A schools out there.
Exactly.
I mean, you
You
have
got to
like
play what they got.
Yeah.
All they can do.
Yeah, exactly. It's I like Coach Noel quite a bit. I met him back when he was the head coach at Pamlico, and he went to the state championship against Murphy in 2019, and Murphy won that game. Uh, but this really neat guy. I saw him. I think it was last year. He said, "Hey Jim," I looked up. And I said, "I know who you are. I can't think of it. I'm the coach of Newbern." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't realize that." But maybe it was in 2018 is when he played in the state championship. In 2019, by then he was in Newbern. But I mean, just the guy even back at Pamlico run the ball, loves to run the ball. It was a fun team to watch, very athletic, and I'm sure he's done the same thing with Newbern, except he instead of having small 1A talent, he's got 4A talent now.
Right.
4A depth.
4A depth.
Yeah, I mean, you still have some really great players in 1A and 2A. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that it's void, but you don't have the depth. If you might get, let's say you have 5 really good skilled position players on in your 2A team, you might have double that many on your 4A team. It's just if somebody gets hurt, you can next man up. Not the case with a lot of 1A and 2A programs.
Yep. Okay, so I guess have we've covered the playoffs.
Yep.
I think we covered the teams. We can and I don't see any other questions. Scroll back here and see. One of the interesting points you made, Jim, and if I could, Garrett, do you mind muting just a moment so we don't get this feedback? Thank you. I would do it, but I don't have an ability to do that. That kind of picture, but I don't want to do that. You were asking where, one of the things to think about is where is Chambers and Huff and all these other teams. One of the observations here is if you look at the history, we normally see Mecklenburg County teams at least in the regional finals. And we didn't see that. Now, Weddington is in Union County. They're just across the Mecklenburg County border. So a lot of times we can lump these things into, an area. They're one of the 4A teams that are in the area. But we don't have a CMS. We didn't have a CMS team make it. Hey, they didn't even make it to the semifinals. So kind of well, I'm discounting. I'm sorry. I forget up there in that upper tough bracket that Grimsley had to chew through. But it's kind of that to me that was a little bit of an interesting point that we didn't have them in the regional finals. I passed Weddington last year on my way to Parkwood. I've gone to Weddington a lot, Jeff. It's a great place. So great environment for football and not hard to get to. I've been to Parkwood too. I tend to like Weddington a little more, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say Parkwood. Is that that's the place that our buddy Lee Edwardson used to call it a cow pasture.
Yeah, exactly. Mount Pleasant was another one of those that was like that too. Kind of up in the middle of nowhere. I remember going up there for a 7-on-7 and my son making that comment. He said, "Dad, we had to pass cows to get here to the field."
I was going to say he should have gone to North Stanley. He'd have enjoyed that
one. Real quickly, maybe the NCHSAA is making a big push about the paper that they put out on officiating, and this is something I'm formulating in my head, Jim, about having a discussion about it and putting out maybe a special video on it. But our fans should know that it's very important that we treat officials with respect. And I always have. And to think that it's their job to take the abuse that they take is ridiculous. And it's going to cost us. It is costing us officials. And if it comes up, we don't have officials, we don't play. We got to start treating these officials with more respect. Teach the young people around you something about respect. It's okay to disagree, but you don't have to be an animal about it. You don't have to use degrading words. It doesn't change anything. The call still stands. You're not achieving anything but making yourself look bad and causing an official to reconsider coming, back next season to officiate or even next week.
During this year, probably the worst I saw, and I like this program quite a bit. I'm not talking about their football program whatsoever, but their fans. When I saw Grimsley play Charlotte Catholic's student body got a little bit too heavy-handed with the officials, and cussed at them, yelling at them, making all kinds of insults. Like we're coming after you, blah blah blah. And there were adults in the stands. I'm like, where are the adults? What are they doing? They're just sitting on their hands. If you're a Charlotte Catholic parent and you let your kids go to a game and act like that, and make sure that they're chaperones. You'd hate to think that a 16, 17, 18-year-old person needs to be chaperoned, but it's getting to the point where you need to, because I'm going to tell you right now, someone is not going to be very happy. They're going to draw a gun on you, and next thing you know, somebody's going to be calling your parents at the morgue. I mean, just use
Yep.
some sense here.
You got to use some common sense. Act like you're in a bad situation for what you're saying there, and keep that in mind with your actions. Jeff asked, "What about fans booing the officials?" A boo is one thing. We're talking about much more extreme than booing or telling an official, yelling out, "You need glasses." Um, I've talked to officials about this, and they don't even listen to that. It's the abusive stuff that's taking place that's got to end. The threats. The coaches do this. The players do it. It's not just the fans. It's the players and the coaches who are the worst. And possibly the players are the worst of the lot. How they
Yeah,
talk to the officials.
one of the things I saw, I think it was beginning of the season, I saw a player that just went off on a referee, and the white hat came right up to him and says, "You go to your coach right now and talk to him." And the guy's like, "What the blank am I supposed to talk about?" And he says, "If you want to play in this game, you go over there right now and talk to him." And the player just walked right off there, and you could see the head coach saying, I'm handling it. And the guy ended up sitting on the bench, the rest of the day. I like
Mhm.
that. I mean, that's a good way of handling that stuff with the players. If you want to stay in this game, you need to go and sit down and talk to your coach right now. And you know what? I'm sure the coach rather him the player talk to him as opposed to getting thrown out of the game.
So it needs to be understood that if a player curses on the field, he can be ejected from the game. And I've seen it happen. Happened in the West Charlotte game. Uh, so they're trying to address it. And unfortunately, it leads to some extreme reactions. But the fact that they've had to add that in to the rules and to look for it, instruct officials to look for it and act on it should be an indicator to everyone that we've got a problem. Um, Jeff says, let's bring it up here. Yeah, that kind of stuff. Thankfully, I haven't seen anything like that. I did see a situation in a game this year where the official was unable to move because of his weight and some other health issues, was unable to get out of the way and ended up going down on the ground, and he threw a flag. And I talked with an observer official about that who happened to be there, and he said they talked to that official about that. He should not have thrown a flag, but the point, we haven't seen anything. I have not seen any direct, going after an official like the reference that you're making there, Jeff. Thankfully, I have never witnessed that. That's assault there and needs to be treated as such. You remember the incident he's talking about where the
Oh
official was
yeah,
tackled?
I remember that quite a bit. I mean, that was awful.
Yeah,
I mean, that was an assault,
it
and
was assault, clear
that kid,
assault.
that kid should never see the light of day ever again on the field. And even as a spectator, I think after something like that, he doesn't deserve to go to a sanctioned athletic event for the state of Texas.
Exactly. But we've got to address this, and it's got to be preached to the kids by the parents. The coaches have got to get on board with it. Now, that's not saying all coaches are abusive, but I've been to enough games through the years and been on the sidelines enough to see enough of it to know coaches are a part of the problem. And typically it's not the head coach and it's not the coordinators. It's the hanger-on coaches, the volunteer coaches that are there. So they might need to get a little more, they might need to do a better job of that. Coaching programs do a better job of vetting coaches for their anger issues.
I saw I guess it was the very first game, the Cardinal Gibbons Julius Chambers game of last year, the opening game, the one that Chambers won, and there was a referee that it almost felt like he was targeting Julius Chambers. It was hard to explain. He would just mouth off at him. I know who the guy is. He doesn't have a lot of personality. I don't think he didn't referee this year.
Mm-hmm.
But he was almost like he was picking a fight. And a football player for Chambers made a bad play, and he said, "Oh, blank." It wasn't the dirty, blank, 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 blank word, but said a very mild one. And he got thrown out of the game. It was like a minute before the second half was in. It was not directed at anybody. It was just a natural explosion. Like if you drop a 20-pound weight on your toe, you may say, "Oh, blank." Just a natural reaction. And the referee threw him out. Then he threw out one of the assistant coaches. And the assistant coaches says, "We need to do something. We need to handle the blanking ball better," or something like that. And referee heard it, wasn't addressed to the referee at all, threw him right out.
Part of the problem with that, Jim, is words change throughout time.
Yeah.
And context of words is important, I think, to bear in mind, in that these words in those contexts, I don't think is cursing, quite honestly.
No.
I don't view it as such. I try to take everything into context, and the words are becoming more common use. But it doesn't matter. Right now, it's viewed as they're viewed as curse words, and the officials have the directive to remove players and coaches from the game who use foul language.
See, if it's to intimidate, that's the problem. If it's a word of expression not used to intimidate, not a problem.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. I agree with that. But they've got to address the problem in some manner. And, when you make corrections to things, sometimes you overcorrect. Think about, trying to tune something in, you overcorrect or you undercorrect. And
to me, you got to use I think we have to use a principle-based approach. Are we acting as good sportsmen? I mean, do we show good sportsmanship? I don't say we have to show great sportsmanship, but if a player is down, you don't go up there and kick them. You don't hit them in the face or anything like that. You don't have to, stand out your hand to the other guy to help him pick them up or anything like that. But you don't knock them Willis down. That, to me, is pretty easy.
right.
If after you get a pass, I see this on college football way too much. A guy will catch a ball, make a really good catch. Defender has good position, and then he starts trash talking the opponent. College, I think the kids are much more mature than they are in high school, so it's not always going to bleed over to some type of violence. High school kids, though, are different animals altogether. They take that really personally. And after the game, I've heard people say, "I'm gonna go get a gun on you," and 99 times out of 100 is no gun, but it's just used to intimidate. And we need to get that crap out of there. I mean, if you make a great pass or make a great hit or a great play, act like you've done it before, and just go back to your team and huddle up or whatever. It's one of the nonsense can go away. Um, too much uh, anger goes on after that. Now I'm all for expression. I enjoy when I watch an NFL game where a team makes a great defensive play, does a pick six, and all of a sudden all the defensive players act like they're rolling a boat or something like that. That's fun. I actually enjoy that. There's something about that I actually find some entertainment with. I'm one of the few that do, but I don't mind it. It's fun. Or the one time I think one of the Saints players returned a ball for a touchdown. He goes under he had a cell phone that was under the goal and got the cell phone and acted like he was calling somebody. That was pretty cool. He got fined pretty good for it, but I enjoyed that. That was clever.
Joe Horn.
Joe Horn, thank you, sir.
Yep.
Yeah, that Joe Horn. That was something Joe Horn did. Now they kind of getting a little more creative. The whack-a-mole game in the Salvation Army cattle, the Jack in the Box. Pretending like bomb going off, stuff like that. They getting a little more creative now. And it's fun to see the creativity coming out of these pro athletes and college athletes when they do something like scoring a touchdown or whatever. But my thing on this, I was talking to you and Jim, in messages earlier, you know, and I got the email too about the movement, and I think the movement's a good thing. It's it's uh it's just the fact that these fans, coaches, and players, they are kind of taking taking it to the extreme. It's more, they treating it more than a sport. They treating it like it's a personal vendetta sometimes. And officials are human. They can, they ain't gonna see everything going on. Now, do you disagree with a call? If you disagree with a call, the you need glasses, you blind, you can't see, you know, you are, you are, you look like a certain celebrity or whatever, stuff like that, fine and dandy. But, don't go to the extreme, like, we're gonna take this outside later on after the game, or I know where your wife lives, I know where you live, stuff like that. Don't get that personal with it. It's a game. You coming out here to support your team. You coming out here to support your players. Your sons, your daughters, your your cousins, nephews, nieces, whatever you coming out there to support. And that's great. Be a supporter. That's awesome. But when you get into the extreme level where people feel like they are uncomfortable, going to a game, officiating the game, watching the game, then that's where that that next level, and that's where this movement needs to be. Um, it needs to be, expanded, because I think it's great that they are taking a stand and using this movement, because something needs to be said, something needs to be done. It's just like a couple of weeks ago we had that incident with Wallace and James Keenan with that boy, getting the gun and shooting the gun off at the ball game. You know, what if he pointed at an official? What if he pointed at a coach or a player or something? You know, that stuff right there is what I'm talking about, where it's getting too extreme. People are taking it too personal. You going for a game, go for the game, enjoy the game. Go buy your popcorn, buy your drink, buy your hot dog, nachos, cheese, whatever. Sit down, enjoy the game. If you don't agree with a call, express your displeasure, but express it in a professional, polite, and basically level-headed way. We are all sophisticated adults and mature adults that we know right from wrong. We know how these things are supposed to be done. I mean, and yes, I agree that a that we don't, an official knows the rules, and we think we may know the rules too. And I agree, we want to express our displeasure for it. When I was coaching rec ball, you know, I didn't disagree a lot with calls. If I had a question, or a concern or whatever, I wasn't going to walk out there to the coach, to the official, and um, be like, hey, you know, you this or that, or putting that official in an uncomfortable position, because I learned and I heard this right here. This goes for coaches, goes for players. If you do not like the call, the way to get an official to call it the way you want to see it is just ask it as a question. Like, hey, Mr. Official, did you see number 79 holding? Did you see, or Mr. Official, did you see, number 14 out there pushing my player? Stuff like that. Don't be like, official, hey, that boy right there is pushing my player, and if you don't do something about it, I'm gonna take you out. You know, stuff like that. No, don't do that. That ain't the way you get an official to help make the call correctly. Point it out in a sophisticated manner. Go out there, speak to the official as a sophisticated human being and say, Mr. Official, did you see such and such, hold? Did you see such and such push this player? Did you see, you know, do you see what I see? You know, and more than likely, if you act sophisticated, more than likely they will call it the way that you see it, and they will have respect for you, and you have respect for them, and it won't make it seem like these officials need to be so uncomfortable and scared to officiate and call a game. Especially a sport like football, or a sport like baseball, you know, or basketball, especially a basketball game, where fans are pretty much right there on top of you, and there ain't nothing really to stop a fan from going onto the court, except except a set of stands that he can just run down the stands and be right there on the court, going after whoever. Football, you got a fence or barricade or whatever, that keeps the fans from the officials, and it's just like right here what Jefferson said. Are you calling these calls on them because you got us for that on our last drive? You just missed a critical one on them. What gives? Stuff like that makes a lot of sense. To ask an official. You got barricades. In football and baseball and some of these other sports, and these officials should feel a little more safer, but because of the immaturity act from some spectators, that's the reason why they are very uncomfortable
One of the best ways to handle referees,
officiating.
one of the best ways to handle referees is kind of like what Dean Smith or Jim Valvano used to do. Like, I like what Dean Smith, one time he came up to a referee and says, "Hey, I just want to apologize last game. We went out and played and our team didn't play very well." And the referee says, "Honestly, I don't remember that game whatsoever you're talking about." He says, "Well, I do, because you didn't officiate that well either. You didn't have a very good game either." And Jim Valvano, of course, he's the one that says, "You don't mind, Barry get thrown out." And he's like, "You don't mind if I tell you what, or you don't mind if for me to think what I'm going to say?" He's like, "Yeah, you can think whatever you want to." He says, "Well, I think you suck." It's that referees have a good sense of humor about.
You know who he said that to?
Yeah,
Woody Hunt.
Yeah,
Woody Hunt.
Yeah, Woody's wife was my U.S. history teacher in high school.
Yeah, Woody told me that story. We shared office space in the same office complex, and Woody, I got to know him actually because a lot of times we took bathroom breaks about the same time, and so he saw my NC State stuff that I would wear, and he gave me that little story. That was funny. But this is something that's got to be addressed, and we'll just see where it goes. People keep doing it. We're not going to have officials, and we're not going to have athletics. So
another one of my favorite stories is about a umpire, major league umpire that threw out Earl Weaver. Earl Weaver, he was like about 5'2" or so, and he just he had turned his hat around so he could get right up to the referee or to the umpire, and the umpire tossed him. And then the next game, the umpire saw him out in there smoking a cigarette in the dugout, and before the game started, he tossed him out for smoking. So the third game comes in, and during the 3-game series, I think Weaver may have managed maybe two innings of those games, and the third game comes up, and he's handing the lineup to the official, and had a dangling from his mouth was a candy cigarette. That bear threw him out for that also. And the funny thing about it was the Orioles won all 3 games that series. So,
my thing with it, I remember a few times too with with ball games and stuff where I think we seen some of the videos on it. One of them was a manager from I think it was a Atlanta Braves farm team, and he got mad with a call officiating umpire call, and he pretty much went berserk on the field. He took the rosin bag and threw it like a grenade at the official. Another time was a manager, Lloyd McClendon from the Pirates. He went up and took up the bases. He got fined for that too, but he took the bases up, and carried them with him wherever he went. But uh, one other thing I want to add to this story, not just the fact that these officials, are getting a lot of abuse and by these fans and spectate and players and coaches. Another thing that is mentioned, that has been mentioned a lot lately is, these officials. You got to look at it too, especially high school officials, especially high school officials down here in North Carolina. They are not getting a lot. They're not getting paid a lot to officiate these ball games. They're getting paid maybe what, 75, $80 per game.
Is it
Maybe
75 or $6? It's not much. They need to up that quite a bit, and I know that's one of the proposals they have to make it more competitive with like Georgia and South Carolina and so forth.
and
Yeah, they just got a raise. Not that a small percentage on a small amount is not a whole lot, but they did give them a raise.
They can almost make as much money flipping burgers.
Still, it's probably just enough
exactly.
to put.
They make more money flipping
in a
burgers.
vehicle, probably.
So, Dale, got anything else you want to chat about?
No, I think we probably have nailed it for the night.
I think so too.
All right. Well, let's. You want to sign us off, Jim?
Yeah, I'll sign us off. Garrett, thank you so much for joining us. Dale, always been great working with you this season. I guess this is our last show for this football season since it's ending. I don't know if we're going to have one on Wednesday or not. Probably not. But
we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I can always do a show, but. For myself, for Garrett Futch, and for Dale Ross, thank you so much for joining us at Carolina Varsity. Take care.
Yep.